Hey y'all. I want to talk to you today about something rather strange. I want to keep it as short as I can because it's easy to get carried away with this. And what I want to talk to you about is pseudoscience um, as it relates to counseling. If you're being responsible as a counselor, then you want to make sure that you're using trustworthy information. I'm not going to counsel somebody using guesswork. One of the things that I don't know if you've experienced this in your past contact with folk who need to talk to somebody, but there's this little thing called intuitive, and common sense is another aspect. Uh, Throw those out the window because they don't fit in counseling, they don't fit in psychology. Yeah, are there some things that are intuitive? Yeah, kind of. But I like to use this example, intuitive and common sense. You're driving down the road, and this guy has this. Well, I'm gonna call it guy. It could be. It doesn't matter. A girl, and they have road rage. Whatever prompts it. This doesn't really matter what this prompting is. So they got this road rage thing going on. So the intuitive slash common sense approach to that would be, uh, boy, this person just hates everybody, or they're just cutting everybody off because they're a jerk, or uh, and that would be the surface appearance. But what you're viewing is the behavior related to a reaction based on some hidden source. They could have just they just gotten fired, or they could have had an argument with their spouse, or they could have gotten any kind of negative news, any negative occurrence that's very testing for their emotional ability to handle could cause them to react in such a manner, which in this case is road rage. So that's the avenue I'm trying to travel down here. I'm trying to travel down a road that explains to you that just because you are hearing or observing something does not mean that that's what's wrong. You have to dig through the layers. We call that psychotherapy. And we delve into that lightly as counselors. We're not, we're psychotherapists in a sense, but we are more concerned with the here and now. So I'm having road rage, or someone's having road rage, and they come to me to be interviewed. What I'm going to ask them is, what was going on in your recent past that's very upsetting, that you think might cause you to want to deflect that to others. So that's the discussion for today. Pseudoscience. How does pseudoscience factor in? Well, let's discuss it. Ethics, science, and pseudoscience. How do you know what you're doing is actually helping and not doing harm? You're tasked with you're tasked with knowing how to do counseling. If somebody's coming to you for counseling, that's your task. Your task is to present to them a professional uh, performance, if you want to call it that. I don't like the word, but it's called that somewhat frequently. I'm going to deliver a sound analysis of what I'm hearing you say. By asking questions, I'm going to determine, hopefully, what the source of the problem is. I'm not going to ask you, you're 32 years old. I'm not going to say, did you have a bad childhood? That may factor in, but that's not what we're worried about in counseling. We're worried about the here and now. So we're gonna form questions that would prompt a client to um, fill us in on what's been going on the last year, maybe two. Most importantly, the last few months, maybe. and let them lead the conversation. So how do we do that with not messing it up? Well, we stay away from pseudoscience. What is science? Science isn't just a collection of facts. It's a method of understanding, period. Understanding what? Everything. There's several defining features related to real science. Number one, empirical evidence. I wish we were in a classroom because I'd want to see a show of hands. Who knows what the word empirical means? It's simple as pie. You hear it thrown around by those that aren't necessarily so knowledgeable about its meaning. I'm not making fun of them. Oh, and this empirical study, that sounds really good. What's an empirical study? It's very simple. Empirical means observation. I can observe it and I can measure it. I can measure it. I can measure the data. I can use scientific measurable means to measure the data of what I'm observing. Is behavior observable? Yes. Is the meaning of the behavior observable? No. That's what we call in psychology mental processes. That's the hidden stuff. That's going on up in here. I can't see that as a counselor. What can I see? I can see your facial expressions, etc. I can hear your language, but I can't see I can see the product of mental processes. I cannot see the mental process. I don't know what the mental processes are. I ask you, what are you thinking? So that's where we begin to look at the basics of how we arrive at a diagnosis. Empirical evidence. The second thing that's a defining feature is testability and falsifiability. Uh, a scientific idea must be testable, and it must be possible to prove it wrong. So, how does that happen? Peer review. Excuse me. I do a research project. I maintain lack of bias in my research. I approach it with a critical attitude, critical thinking. Many people mistake critical thinking for analytical thinking or open mindedness. Open mindedness is just an element of it, as well as analytical thinking. Critical thinking has more to do with removal of bias. So I must be a critical thinker. I'm not judging things, I'm investigating things. So, and I have to do it in a way that's testable. If you had basic psychology, you remember Wilhelm Wundt, or if you were German, you'd call him Wilhelm Wundt. Leipzig University, the father of modern psychology. He brought psychology into the world of science, not that it hadn't been around for centuries, but it wasn't a science. It was laughed at. And he created introspection, which was a testable, at least in uh, primitive ways, a testable science. So he put us on the map as far as psychology is concerned. So testability and falsifiability. It's got to be able. I need to be able to prove that hey, you're wrong. Uh, so you're dealing in hypothetical thinking here, and then replication, not duplication. Replication. If a finding is real, other researchers should be able to reproduce it. Now, let me give you this example. I come in, let's say we're in a face-to-face class, and I come in the morning or whatever time the class meets, and I say we're going to do an experiment, and we do the experiment. I come in the next day, the next time we meet, and I say we're going to do an experiment. And I do the very same experiment with the same class members. That's duplication. So what about replication? Okay, so I come in the classroom and I say we're going to do an experiment. And I want you to number yourselves off. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, all you twos get up and leave, and all you ones stay in place. And I do this experiment, and I get the results. So the next time the class meets, I tell the class, okay, all you number ones, y'all go, you have the day off. All you number twos stay here. And I do the same experiment that I did already, but with a different sample. That's replication. What am I looking for? I want to reproduce the results. So replication is finding real if is determining if a finding is real. And other researchers do the same experiment related to samples, then we get reproduction. And finally, fourth on our list is peer review. Before research is accepted, it's scrutinized by other experts. So I'm giving you a list of scientific principles here if you don't remember. Peer review. It's like they're standing there with their knives ready to carve this thing up. It's not that they're mean-spirited. That's not the idea. The idea is they're looking for mistakes. They're looking to make sure all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, because this may become theory. Our theory is challengeable, yes, but we want to make sure when we create what we think will be theory that it will withstand peer review. So we do all of that in counseling, and what we wind up with is called an evidence-based practice. Therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, have been tested repeatedly, exhaustive testing, and it's shown to be effective in a lot of cases. One of the original reasons that CBT was created was to treat depression, and anxiety, other things, a lot of other psychological conditions, and that includes counseling. We can use CBT in counseling. Just we use a kind of a condensed version. I'm not sure how to explain it. You don't go to the depth that you would go through. If somebody's hurting that bad, then you're going to refer them to a psychologist. Is that? I hope that makes sense. So that's what science is. What's pseudoscience? Yeah, this is fun and games. What is pseudoscience? Pseudoscience refers to beliefs or practices that claim to be scientific but lack the evidence and rigor of true science. What is the most controversial one on the planet right now? Not UFOs. I think we're finding out that those are real. I don't know where they're from. China probably made them. I don't know. Um, who knows? Russians, they're on to something. I don't have a clue. I don't want to get off track. What is pseudoscience then? What's the most controversial version of pseudoscience? I'll answer it for you. Psychic. There's nowhere at the moment, unless it happened today, nowhere on the planet where there's true scientific documentation of successful psychic phenomena. I don't care who you are. People argue this till they drip blood out of their pores. Psychic is, at the moment, a pseudoscience. Now, let me put some salve on that wound. I don't know that any of you in this class would necessarily believe in psychic phenomena, but let me correct some things for you. First of all, there's this thing called suggestibility. Human beings are prone to be subject, or what's a better word, victims of suggestibility. There are people on this planet that prey upon suggestibility and emotion. Uh, if you are looking for something and you've gotten to the desperate level of seeking out somebody to predict the future for you, then you have placed yourself in a highly suggestible situation. Pseudo psychics are very good at reading human emotion. They're very good at leading questions. They're very good at double talk. So, no scientific proof. Is it being studied scientifically? Absolutely. CIA's done a lot of study with things like remote viewing, etc. If psychics were legitimate, then as a past Charlotte police officer, I can tell you our detective division, our investigative division, would not have had investigators in there. They would have had psychics in there because a psychic could have said, "Oh, okay, I know who committed this murder. He lives over here on 3rd and Poplar in that gray house." No, that doesn't happen. Uh, or we would know every movement of our enemies. Just call the psychic in. "Hey, Joe, check this out for us." I'm not making fun of them. I'm just telling you that pseudoscience is not trustworthy. But sometimes I prefer to call it not fake science, which is what pseudo means. I like to call it maybe unproven science. Because who knows? There may be folk out there. Back in early biblical times, there were mediums that contacted the dead. And that really happened. It's in the Bible. What's the Bible tell you? Don't mess with that. Don't mess with trying to contact the dead. So there's stuff goes on that in our little view of the world, maybe we can't really figure out. But at the moment, no, don't believe in I don't believe in psychic. Uh, there are other astrology. Planets are all lined up, so I'm going to win the lottery. Um, that's another thing that to consider. If psychics were real, then all of them would win the lottery every day because they could. Their excuse for that is, well, that's not my area of expertise. So whatever. There's a big thing here: coincidence that goes along with suggestibility. So if I tell you that something is going to occur within the next, let's say, 3 weeks, what are you going to do? You're going to be looking for that. You can almost create conditions to make that happen. It's proven, scientifically proven. Coincidence is 50-50, right? 50% chance it'll happen, 50% chance it won't. Uh, and then we have these things called hits and misses. Psychology views it that way. A psychic may get coincidentally one prediction right, but there are 4 that are wrong. But the person who was seeking psychic help uh, concentrates on the hit, the win, so to speak, and they dismiss the other things and they concentrate on the win. So scientifically, it's not proven yet. Some common characteristics of psychic, other than what I've described to you, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get on a soapbox. I wasn't really on one. I just want to direct you in the right direction. But some of the common characteristics are heavy reliance on personal stories and testimonials, uh, lack of controlled studies, a big one there, resistance to being tested or challenged. Uh, Several years ago, a study group, a scientific study group, called in a group of astrologers and said, predict this, predict for us whatever the subject matter was. And they did. And they said, okay, we'll be in touch with you in a month or whatever the time frame was. And none of them would return and be interviewed about their predictions. So resistance to being tested or challenged. This is a true study, by the way. Claims that are vague or impossible to disprove. That's human emotion. So we have to be careful that we don't fall trap into hearing something and then presenting that as a potential cause or diagnosis or whatever you want to do with the information and it not be scientifically supported. Pseudoscience sounds scientific. Sometimes technical language and reference to, quote, studies that don't really exist or are very poorly executed, poorly conducted, didn't follow scientific principles. Sometimes that's a um, go to for pseudoscience. So why are we so guarded against that? We don't want to do guesswork as counselors. You're dealing with somebody's mental well-being, and we're not going to play with people's minds. It's like a medical doctor doesn't want to play around with physical stuff. I think this will fit in here. Let's see. Don't do that. There's an ethical part of this. You're going to hear a lecture about ethics later on. What about ethics? Ethics in counseling. Several core principles. You'll hear these words again throughout the session, most likely. Uh, Beneficence means promoting well-being of whom? Clients. Non-maleficence, avoiding harm. Pseudoscience causes a great deal of harm. Autonomy, respect the client's rights, their right to make informed decisions. They may want a second opinion. Hey, Pastor Rob, I think I want to talk to Pastor Smith about this too, if you don't mind. And if that's the case, you're promoting their well-being. Don't be offended. Justice, that ensures fairness and equal treatment. Oh my goodness gracious. We're dealing in cultural stuff, whether we want to be or not. Our churches have multicultures in them. Hopefully, most of them do. And I can't treat you unfairly because you're from a different culture. You'll be taking if you're doing the degree here, you'll be doing multicultural counseling. You'll do a class in multicultural counseling. I teach that. I did teach it up until now. I taught multicultural psychology uh, here at Carolina University. And probably, I think, out of all the classes that I've ever taught in my career, all 300 years of my career, Intro to Psychology and Multicultural Psychology are my two favorites because I love different cultures. I love people. I love to see the differences. We all have the same needs: belonging, security, love, uh, among some others. Even if it doesn't matter what culture you're from, it's how you go about acquisition of those kind of things. That sometimes is the question. So justice, you treat everybody with fairness. If you're a pastor in a church and you have um, someone from Nigeria or someone from Guadalajara in your church and they need counseling, they're treated the same as everyone else. I'm not saying you wouldn't. Don't take this the wrong way. Uh, but there's this word, ethnocentricity, and that's a judgmental word. It means that you view a different culture as inferior because they don't do things like your culture does. I don't think anybody in this course, I hope not, I wouldn't think you would be unloving, uh, but just guard against those thoughts. No offense to anyone. And infidelity, and trust and professional responsibility. Um, that's a bedrock. You can't do any of this if you can't establish trust from your client and if you shun professional responsibility. I'm sitting here thinking about this and I'm worried about this justice thing I just discussed at length. I'm hoping that nobody took offense to that because I'm not accusing anybody of being racist or biased. Scientific, pseudoscientific use or the use of pseudoscientific methods violates many, if not all, of those principles I just introduced you to. Um, if the course of treatment that you're following is ineffective, then there's a potential you're not promoting well-being, and it could be that you are not following a responsible path. Again, that sounds accusatory. It's not. You need to be aware of these things. Sometimes our heart goes out to the person and we want to say anything to make them feel better. Don't do that. Don't ever tell them, I know how you feel. I think I've mentioned that before. If I haven't, you heard it. Don't ever say, I know how you feel. I know how you're feeling. That rather would, the better statement would be, uh, this must make you feel pretty bad, or whatever the case is, some unidentifiable thing. If you're doing something that causes harm or delays effective treatment, you're violating non malfeasance. You're doing harm. Ethical practice means that counselors rely on methods supported by credible evidence, not guesswork. And you have to remain transparent with your client. You have to talk about what's known, and they may come in with a situation you don't know. This is a first for me. Let's talk about this. If I think I need to bring in more help with your approval, that's what we'll do. So let's place this in a real practice situation. Let's look at how it plays out in real practice. Scientifically supported therapy, because that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be doing therapy. It needs to be backed by multiple studies. Whatever approach you're going to use, CBT, REBT, I'm not going to name them all off, must be backed, whatever it is, must be backed by multiple studies, not something you read in the paper. It must show measurable outcomes. How do we do that? By keeping notes and descriptive notes. Okay, here was the condition of this person on day 1. Now it's day 15, and here's what we're looking at. And be open to revision. Just because you select an approach, you shouldn't get locked in on that approach, because you may find out that that's really not, although it might have been indicated in the beginning. As you delve deeper into the problem, you find out, whoops, we need to shift gears here. Pseudoscientific approach would do this. It would promise quick or guaranteed results. No, there's none of that. Rely on testimonials rather than data. Well, Uncle Harry went to and found out that this is what should have been done. And those pseudoscience approaches resist rigorous testing. The word lie comes to mind. If a method, as an example, if a method claims to cure trauma in a single session, and there's no evidence of that, that should raise some serious concerns on the part of the client. Your role is not just to help, but the help that you give is grounded in reality. If you're, it sounds like I'm accusing again that you're going to run out there and you're going to use some kind of pseudoscience to help folk. It's not what I'm saying. Risks of using pseudoscience, though, are significant, very significant. Clients may experience worsening symptoms, financial loss, and here's a biggie: loss of trust in mental health professionals. And let me tell you something. If if a mental health care professional gets a bad report, it's it's like it explodes. It'll blow up. People will know right away, pretty quickly, that this person is not trustworthy. They're a quack. Um, I'm not going to give you any examples, although I know some. There are also consequences for those who practice pseudoscience in counseling. Ethical violations is what this whole class is about. If you happened to have gone clinical and you have a license, you just gave it up if you're practicing pseudoscience and you're caught. And then there's some legal liability. Look, licensure practicing outside of the church. You better have malpractice insurance, and you better be sure it's good insurance. Counseling within the church. There's a protective quality there. We will get into the laws in another course in this in your curriculum that addresses legal liability. Just bear in mind that there's a potential for that. And I won't delve into it to take up the rest of our time together. Critical thinking, I've mentioned that. How do you protect yourselves and your clients? We ask questions of them and us. What is the evidence? If you come and ask me to counsel you, and we come into our little area and we sit down and say, "What's the evidence?" No, I'm not going to do that. But we need to know what the evidence is. Has this been tested? Now, I'm not asking the client these things. I'm doing this internally. Critical thinking. What's the evidence? Has it been tested? Is it peer reviewed? Are the claims realistic? What are we talking about here? We're talking about the approach that we've chosen to use initially, but that it's open for revision. Science isn't perfect, but it's the best system we have for minimizing error and protecting those that we will be serving. So, what's the big deal? Counseling, in counseling, good intentions aren't enough. They're needed, but they're not enough. Ethical responsibility requires that you ground your work in sound science and you remain vigilant against pseudoscience. I don't think any of you in this class I would have to worry about related to using pseudoscience while you counsel those that you love. Because we're Christians, we love everybody. At least we try to, right? Your future clients are depending on you to help them in uncomfortable emotional situations. So there you have it. Didn't mean to go that long, but it did. So there you go. Talk to you soon.